minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey folks, welcome to the Launch Sequence Podcast. We're back for another week to talk about space things. And boy, oh boy, do we have a war veteran with us today to talk a little bit about the upcoming plans and changes going on with Star Citizen. Thank you for joining us today, BoredGamer.
No worries.
Thank you for
having me.
a little chuckle at the war veteran. No, man, I've been listening to your content about as long as I've watched Star Citizen, and I hats off to you for still covering it as well as you do. Because
So that's the compliment that I get from people. It's that good job for sticking with it.
like, you're still alive. Wow.
Dedicated Star Citizen News channel for over a decade. What have I been doing with my life?
Well, I mean, like you have figured it out. I feel like you've understood sort of where you like to have your coverage be, and you've understood where the game is to allow you to do coverage. I feel like one of the things that I've had to learn a lot over the last few years is, like, you shouldn't be making the same type of content for Star Citizen all the time, because Star Citizen doesn't like that. Like, the game itself will hurt you for trying to some patches you just got to take off. But I think you don't play as much, right?
Yeah, so I certainly don't make gameplay content as videos so much. I play Star Citizen a reasonable amount, probably not as much as well, definitely not as much as a streamer would. But my stuff's much more focused, and I seem to play a lot more during an either CAR-T or early PT builds, because I'm like really interested to know how something's going to work. Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I get that. I didn't play much until my computer could handle it. But even after that, I was reluctant to play, I think, until like 3.14 or so. It was so rough back then. But
I enjoyed it all still. Like I've enjoyed. I mean, not so much 3.18, because it was hard to be able to get into play, and then when you just got disconnected all the time. But through most of the Star Citizen patches, sort of warts and all, I've sort of enjoyed jumping in, messing around, seeing the new stuff. Even like during Pyro Playground, or even when they had the jump point there with no effects beyond just a grey blob, I was like, oh, cool, server meshing works. I can go to Pyro. So all that sort of stuff's been super interesting for me. But for a normal player, or someone that wants to sit down and play for a long period of time, and it was, I want to play a game, Star Citizen might not be as appropriate for them.
yeah, that was my thing for a while. Was just, it's not really the game that I'm excited about. It's the development, and we've definitely gotten more in the direction of like a fun game lately. I would say I actually enjoy jumping in when the game works correctly.
Yeah,
and that's been nice.
Yeah,
So, go ahead.
no, carry on. I was just I like rambling. That's 'cause I ramble
Well,
about
we got a
random
lot
stuff.
we got a lot of opportunity for rambles today. The company that is building CIG, for those who don't know, is over 1,000 employees now. It's a big company. It is not your small, rickety startup anymore. They've made almost $1 billion. They're 12 years on, and they're producing 2 different games. They've got a lot going on, and a lot of people are really just interested in 1 or 2 of those things. But I think today would be a good time for us to look at kind of how the company is doing, how they're performing, how the game is doing, and what they can do going forward, or rather what they say they're going to do going forward to fix things, and kind of how that looks in comparison to the rest of the development. Because we kind of been here before.
It's a cycle. It's
Yeah.
a 2 yearly cycle with CIG, and with let's try something new. Oh, something hasn't worked, and they look more reactive than they are proactive for the most part, which is the only shame that I have with what's been going on. Like, I actually really like the idea of them sort of shifting focus to a more playable, content-driven game. It makes sense with Squadron 42's release looming. It makes sense getting their house in order, make the game more mainstream, get it out of alpha, whatever that means. But it would have been a lot more powerful and poignant and interesting and believable, is I suppose the word I'm actually searching for, if it had come off the back of a patch that was really, really stable and good anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they'd be like, oh, you had this planned. Cool. Yeah, I understand. Not as a reactive response to 4.0 and 4.0.1, not the best releases for a lot of players. Good for
Mm.
me. I mean, I've been loving it, but I know a lot of other people have not been able to play or do the stuff they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think that it's reactive? 4.0 came out and they were like, oh, we need to completely shift and just focus on stability and no more features.
I think it's partly reactive. I mean, I do think that they were probably shifting focus a bit towards that anyway, because there's not that many big features before 1.0. There are some things that are just essential. Again, so this the change in pace and the change in cadence for development and content driven over feature driven would have made a lot more sense to me if they had engineering out and the sort of associated stuff with ship pipeline
Yeah.
circuitry and stuff
Yeah.
done and fully and physicalized components, because then they can go, well, actually, as part of this content driven set of releases, we're going to get the flight model and combat model in order. And that still might be the case. And engineering might only be a couple of months away or something. We don't know. But it could also be a year away,
Yeah.
engineering.
Yeah.
Like,
I was going to say, I would have thought the former maybe a month ago, but messaging has changed a little bit.
yeah. Yeah, exactly that. I mean, I would have thought that we'd have had it by March, or at the very latest, middle of this year. But now it looks like, are they going to do a switcheroo with sandworms and just go, have some sandworms? We're still working on engineering, but they need that engineering gameplay in and to get the flight model and combat model all sort of ironed out for Squadron as well, right?
Yeah. So that's a key example of kind of what they're doing here, because we've been talking about this, but for people who are listening who might not understand the direction shift that Star Citizen is taking, like Board just laid out, engineering might be taking a backseat compared to something like sandworms, not necessarily because they want to push sandworms or fauna over like crucial features, but because the sandworm might be content compared to the engineering being features, in that they might just use a bunch of features put together into like outposts or missions or something like that. Doesn't take changing of the actual code or engine. It's just putting in new stuff for us to do. What would you add on to that?
Yeah, so I mean, let's hope that engineering actually is going to be sorted out shortly. But I mean,
I
yeah,
would hope, yeah.
The feature focus would be them trying to get base building, them trying to get crafting, and that sort of stuff into the game as quickly as possible, or focusing on those without focusing on stability. The content-driven stuff is more missions, expanding out what we've got in game, evolving what we've got in game already, without adding those new things, which often cause more problems. But yeah, it sounds like a good idea. But anytime CIG talk about something like this, the Blue Sky's thinking of it and the way they present it to us, it sounds like a good idea. People could easily argue it's more of the same from CIG, just going, oh, this hasn't worked, we'll try this. I'm actually okay with that. If something isn't working or something needs to be changed, yeah, do something else. And potentially you could argue, and I think a lot of people would, that if you were to clean up what we've got already for Star Citizen, evolve it out a bit, expand it out a bit, and everything worked without any bugs. I mean, dreaming without any bugs, but without any bugs and no more resets and stuff like that, game would actually be pretty good fun, pretty great.
Yeah.
It's got the wow factor even with all the problems, right?
That's why people keep playing. Yeah, it's you go through an arc of playing Star Citizen, you jump in and you see it, and it's like, whoa, games don't really do this. And before you get to all the jank and you get a little bit jaded and frustrated, it's just like, this is a very unique experience. And a lot of people would say if they just unwrapped that and allowed it to shine a little bit, it would be a great time. But this is really just a pendulum swing on a constant debate of, do they keep pushing really hard to finish what they want to do with Star Citizen, or do they slow down and make something that people can actually enjoy? And I feel like they were kind of planning on switching when Star Citizen or when server meshing came online as well. But I do agree with you. I think engineering was definitely supposed to be there too. And I bet the quantum travel rework was probably something they wanted in also.
Well, I suspect that's not a feature, right? That's content driven.
I hope.
I saw loads of leaks on that a little while ago, and it's It's pretty far along from what I can tell.
Yeah. There was some stuff on YouTube about that last year, right?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
Like,
Um,
one of dev
it's very
accidentally or potentially posted some stuff they weren't supposed
yeah.
to.
I watched that a lot. I really like the way that looks.
Very pretty, even in its sort of concept.
Yeah.
Mm.
I was looking up before when you were talking about when we were talking about the shift of what's going on with Star Citizen. I had made a tweet a couple days ago, and so there was some conversation that came off that, and Jared added some extra clarification there
Mm.
that I mean, it's not news, but it helps send the message. He said that they're not cutting content, they're slowing down features. So they picked stability over features because it was features that kept them from stabilizing. And I think further down, he says, yeah, so content is like a place to go, an item to use, or a thing to do, like an outpost, spaceship, or event. Whereas gameplay would be like resource management, crafting, or base building. So
Yeah.
mostly what we were saying. And I think one of the big questions I have is, how much we've talked about, was this reactive or not? How much of that messaging changed between Chris's letter from the chairman in the end of December and this announcement in the beginning of February?
I mean, there wasn't any time scale on what Chris wanted in his letter from the chairman.
That's true.
So they've still got a pathway to 1.0 and the 2026 release of Squadron. And I think that it kind of makes sense what they're doing, right? I think maybe originally they had wanted to release 1.0 and Squadron Episode 1 at the same time, but they've gone, maybe not now. Let's actually just get Star Citizen into a place where we can say it's out of alpha, it's more mainstream, and people that play Squadron will naturally move over to play Star Citizen, and we can have this big mainstream game. That's what it looks like to me. But
So-
when it comes to Chris's letter from the chairman, for the most part, I think it's pretty accurate still. I mean, there's going to be stuff that you can analyze and go, no, they've changed, and I'm okay with them changing a bit. Some of the stuff that they've got with their planning for this year, a bit reactive to what's happened with the patch launches, but I'm cool with them. And in fact, I think it's probably quite a good idea thinking about it to be more content driven.
Yeah. I mean, we've been feature driven for a long time, so you feel like they're kind of reacting on the fly right now. To who do you think is their?
A little bit, at least there's at least a element of that. I'm not going to say they're entirely doing it because I think there was a good amount of planning, and they've just gone, well, actually, let's just let's actually tell people that we're going to slow down with some of these features, and we're going to, because it's monthly patches, right? That's the other big thing.
Yeah,
it's monthly patches, which is crazy from a Star Citizen sort of point of view, where we have a patch a quarter if you're lucky.
Right. And that's usually not the quarter that it was supposed to be in.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't they try to do monthly patches like a long time ago in the 2.x timeline?
So they've tried a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
They've tried quarterly patches. I'm not sure if that works either. But so what we've had with Star Citizen realistically is that they've tried to stay within patch release windows, and it's never really worked. Monthly might work really well with them because they can just go, let's just get a bundle of fixes together. If it's ready, great, push it out. If we've got a feature that's ready, because there's still going to be features coming, there's still going to be things coming, they can put that on the preview build. Doesn't affect a monthly patch release. They can focus on clearing up all these problems that players have had in the game for a decade. Well, I mean, obviously we haven't had the game in the way it is now for a decade, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Do you think that they are going to be, do you think that they're still going to be trying to use the EPTU this year more than, say, last year? Because last year they talked about it, and it seemed like they were going to use it, but then they didn't so much. This year, it seemed like Chris was saying, almost laying it out to be like a experimental branch that would be running alongside to have these features getting better and better. Do you think that will actually be the case, or maybe with the way that they're now talking about things, they might be pulling back from using that as much?
I think it's all sort of kind of meaningless. They'll expand if they need to run a PTU branch or two PTU branches simultaneously and they can't, and the preview branch is already being used. Yeah, maybe if it makes sense for them, but they've got that available to them. But it's just a room. It's sort of irrelevant what they call it, right? They can put it on preview build. They can put it as a PTU patch. Is the current patch we've got on the PTU for Evocati, is that an EPTU build? Let me actually check. Like it's sort of kind of irrelevant, the naming schemes.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's interesting to me because I'm thinking about how they used to do the PTU with the quarterly patches, and we would be in PTU for at least a month, I would say, most of the time. So if they're doing monthly patches, well, they're not going to be feature heavy, which I think we can all say is probably what was pushing back the patches before, was just the features not working. If they can skip around that and they have a more stable environment, I wonder, will the PTU be running for a whole month and then a patch comes out and then the PTU starts up again? Or are they going to collapse that scale down to only run the PTU 1 month or 1 week every month?
This is the big thing that people aren't really talking about. And I sort of put it in my notes to research. We know from experience that CIG, when they're making a build and then sort of refining that build and taking that build back to dev branch and then taking it out of dev branch and putting it to live or PT or whatever, it takes them some time. Yeah, it takes them some time to make these builds. Their tools are super refined now. How is the monthly patch cadence? How inefficient is it for them to make a monthly patch?
Yeah.
Because it might be like, actually, no, it's our tools are so refined now. We can pump patches like this out every day, and there's no real problem. But going before like Delta patching and stuff, we knew that it was actually quite an effort. It took a long time. It was like, and they had to re-gear afterwards and bring the fixes back from one patch to another and stuff. But I mean, are they all working within the 4.0 branch? Is it all super easily? There's a lot of stuff that's remaining unanswered from the letter from the chairman and the Star Citizen Live that just went out.
Yeah, agreed. Do you think that we're going to see a roadmap roundup this week? Like, are we going to finally see what's coming up?
I don't know. I mean, and what is a roadmap roundup anymore? Like every month? Isn't it a monthly patch? So the roadmap stuff is a really, really useful tool. Both the roadmap they have on their website and the sort of updates that they have for it in general. Now, I suppose they can. Maybe they'll change the roadmap roundup to being monthly as well. And then I don't know.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about that.
Big change. Well, there's such a big change in the shows that are going out, the roadmap, the monthly reports. I mean, the Squadron 42 monthly report, the newsletter, looks to be and potentially will be, although we don't know what's going to happen with the next one, gutted. And they're just sort of like doing very small segments for Squadron 42 is going to be released soon, next year maybe. But it wasn't like a full-on monthly report like we have with the Persistent Universe. So,
why do you think that is? Why did they minimize the newsletter?
Well, so they are focusing on polish, and it will just be optimizations made to X, and a lot of the stuff that they with that stuff they don't want to share as well without spoilers. They are getting into a more a position now where they're going to want to start doing a actual proper advertising campaign for the game, and yeah, they're being a bit more sort of cautious about what they share and what they show with it. And it's one of the reasons they immediately stopped that Squadron 42
briefing
show. Yeah, the briefing room.
Yeah.
They went, oh, actually, if we start to show more, there's not going to be anything left to show before we actually go live with the game. So I sort of understand what they're doing. It's just I always want more rather than less. And the shake-up is giving me more in some regards and less in others.
Yeah. And there is a staff shake-up too, we're going to talk about in a bit. Before we get to that, though, I do want to ask, do you think that this big shift is something that they should have done earlier? I think it's a sentiment a lot of people have.
So it's an interesting one. I maybe for 4.0. As I said earlier, this would all make a load more sense if it came off the back of a fantastically refined and playable patch. But it does look like it's at least in part in response to a bad patch launch. And them going, look, we actually do need to get into a position now where we're making the game a lot more playable. But yeah, maybe for 4.0. If you, um, I was always in favor up until like 2 years ago of them not having a playable game and actually just working on the game and getting it all ready before getting it into like a beta. So I don't want to I don't want to betray my past self too much. But yeah, so yeah, maybe for 4.0 they should have made the shift. But I understand why they've done it now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be overly critical of it as long as they can sort of get it into a very playable state. I mean, it makes sense.
I wonder if it's not something that they wanted to do with 4.0, but because the launch was just such a, how do I put this? Struggle. It was just kind of all lost in the noise, and they didn't have the time to do that, to make that kind of an announcement.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that 4.0 is the last feature-driven patch that they had before this change, for sure. But then, really, I would have wanted 4.0.1 to be that super refined patch. But that said, they tried. They have tried with 4.0.1. They fixed a ton. They fixed hundreds, well, over 100 sort of bugs and made a huge amount of optimizations. They actually got Vulkan into a really good state briefly, then broke it again somehow. So I think the latest GeForce drivers added to the breaking of it.
Nice.
But
love drivers.
Yeah, I mean, well, so the thing is that NVIDIA drivers, GeForce drivers, and game drivers aren't written with Star Citizen in mind, right? Because Star Citizen's not a released game in the view of NVIDIA or whatever, and they're not optimizing drivers for it. And lots and lots of devs are just relying on DLSS and that sort of tech now to optimize their games. Whereas hopefully CIG won't do that. Lazy optimization. Ooh.
They've got a lot of optimizing to do, that's for sure. Like they're going to need to whip out all the tricks.
Well, but that's what this year might be about.
Yeah. And people are excited. People have been calling for that for a long time. I mean, I do think that long term this was somewhat of the plan. I think this all was supposed to happen much earlier, but I do think that 4.0 and server meshing were supposed to come out, and then they would kind of start to actually care or focus on the stuff. It seems like with Vulkan, like you mentioned, and even with the resource network, a lot of it was kind of lining up. It just, all of them were off by like a year or two from each other in terms of being ready to be tested by us, I guess, because we get the Cargo Refactor about a year and a half ago. Then we get Gen 12 maybe a year ago, Cargo Refactor 7 months ago, the Network Resource Manager, like maybe within the next 6 months. Server meshing just came out. So it's like, what if that had all come out at the same time? Probably would have broken everything.
Well, I mean, they all broke everything individually instead.
Yeah, that's true.
Sometimes only a little bit, but sometimes a lot of it. But when Vulkan was working, I wasn't bottlenecked at my CPU for the first time ever in Star Citizen. I wasn't bottlenecked at my CPU for like the 8 hours of gameplay I got in it before they broke it again.
They're making progress there. They're making progress.
They genuinely are.
Yeah.
They're also breaking stuff as they go. So.
Let's talk about staff moving, because that's also a big shakeup that the company has been going through for a little while now. I mean, that's something that has hit the whole industry since 2021. But there are definitely some interesting movements going on at CIG. What do you think of some of that?
So it depends on what you mean. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. So obviously they've got their big UK studio and big German studios now. They've been downsizing, or at least not hiring. Well, they have definitely downsized, but they certainly haven't been hiring to their LA and Austin studios. Sort of moving a load of their staff to the UK that can commute, getting everyone out of working from home, or for the most part, not working for home so much, and being able to come down to the office. With that come a bit of restructuring to some of the teams, and there's some layoffs and stuff like that with the just general devs and people at CIG. But I suspect you're talking more about the C-suite employees, C-level employees. So to be honest, for the most part, the C-suite employees, they're not devs, and I don't really care about them moving around. Some of them are obviously going to be losing CIG years of experience by them getting rid of, or by them leaving or whatever. But maybe they didn't align with the strategy or the new sort of way that CIG are going to be doing stuff. But like I was sort of more, I think was it 2022, Paul Jones as art director when he left. That was
Yeah.
and potentially you could argue John Pritchett in 2018, him leaving because he's now doing stuff for X4. His flight model very 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 technical and good. Maybe not what they needed for Star Citizen at the time. And you've got people like Jay Lee that left a while ago.
Yeah.
I suppose more recently we're talking important people that left are like Todd Pappy, Jake Bradley, even the community manager, and potentially Tony Zerovic. Although that's a confusing can of worms to open up because CIG have not made a statement on that.
Yeah.
But people like Eric N. Davies, Carl Jones, Elliot Chin, the sort of C-suite managers, sort of like chief people officer, chief strategy officer, CMO, chief marketing officer, they aren't devs. They might bring years of experience to stuff in Star Citizen, but they might have people that can subsume their jobs or are better at what they want. So we don't know if this is a problem for CIG or if it's actually a good thing for them and they're re-gearing. Because a lot of people will be like, oh, the problem is the C-suite and the management. Okay, well, if that's the case, maybe this is a great thing.
Yeah. So that's, I think, a big question is like, a lot of people would say that it's the decision makers that have held Star Citizen back compared to Squadron 42 or just compared to games in general. And a lot of people have wanted there to be, different leadership, so to say, or different people making those calls. And this could be one of those types of changes. We don't really know, but I do think it's interesting to hear your perspective because you've been, you know a lot of what's been going on here. I mean, even just being able to name off the devs of people who have been moving around is.
I'm trying to think if there's any more that are really. They're
Dan
probably
Truffin, I think, is somebody that you missed
when
there.
did he leave?
I believe towards, I think this time last year or so, in between CitizenCon 2023 and Chris's letter from the chairman that announced Todd Pappy as well.
So
if I'm not mistaken.
Is he design director? What was?
I don't remember what he was doing, but he was pretty closely tied to the resource network. That I do remember him having a hand in that.
I know he's a systems designer, but I'm sure he was he became a director or something.
But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to note because Star Citizen has definitely struggled from management issues at different points in the project. I don't think that's always been the problem that they've dealt with, but there's a lot to consider when the team is changing out at a time like this because the game is also coming into its own. It feels like they're finally starting to want it to be a game and be something they can sell, and maybe they're moving a team in that they feel like is more capable of that than building a game engine.
Well, the other interesting thing about sort of these shakeups and stuff, I've actually lost my train of thought. I've gone. It's gone.
That's happened to me like 5 times today. That's okay. I understand. If it comes back to you, just interrupt me. So I actually am interested in talking a little bit about Tony Z because you said
Tony Z Emeritus.
Yeah, his is a little bit weirder than everyone else's, but also his is such a this is like practically a drama topic, I want to say, not even like following the development because Tony Z has been such in question for so long. His name has been tied to so many different things. I have personally been very, very excited for the economic simulations he's talked about, but a lot of people would tell you that's why he talks about them because he's very good at getting people excited. And his systems didn't really come into the game after he talked about them. What would you say to that? Do you feel like it's probably his stuff is still continuing on even if he has moved? Is it like is Quantum done?
No. So there will be a dynamic economy for Star Citizen, and there will be a quanta type system. Maybe it's a bit stripped back, maybe it's not. That sort of stuff is, I believe, hard, because I talked to a load of CIG at CitizenCon, and that all still aligns with their plans, from what I can tell. I mean, take it with a pinch of salt, because it's sort of partly off the record. But I talked to Benoit and stuff about it as well, to an extent. So the thing is with Tony Z, we don't know what emeritas means in his particular case, because it could just be that he wants to keep that title. He could be that he's partly working there, just not as much. It could be someone else is also a game director now, because emeritus does not mean you've retired. It can mean you've retired, but it can also mean that you've retired and do some work. It can also mean that you've changed title in your job, but want to retain the old title. There's quite a lot of stuff it can mean. So until CIG actually tell us and release the financials, which seem to be
a little lagging behind a little bit.
A little bit later than normal, suspiciously late with things that they might want to announce at the same time. But I love Tony Z. He's one of the people that I would be like, it would be a shame for him not to work at the project, though a lot of the stuff that he wanted to do has yet to come to fruition. But it's all stuff that I know they've worked on, they want to get in game. It's an important driving factor of the game, and maybe they'll do it in a different way if he's left. Maybe they'll, as I said, strip it back, or maybe it is just being worked on. It's just a while before it gets into the game. Is it an important part of 1.0? Some of it is, yes, because you need a dynamic economy, right?
Yeah, and also I think this now puts into question, how is the bounty hunting going to work? Because a lot of it was based on that idea of this sort of organic tracking people down with the quantum system and their preferences and all that.
As far as I'm aware, that's still all coming. They haven't said they're stripping it back, but they might. It might be it might be stripped back a little, but it's not. It's not getting removed. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the vibe I'm getting from quite a few of the things. Is they now have to realisticize them. But Tony had knowledge from the past. He worked on Ultima Online, I think, and he worked at Origin Studio, I believe, at some point. So he's got like a lot of history in MMOs and game dev, and they might be even just keeping him on for that, right? To just have that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that he is semi-retired, and so that he's like, look, I want to work on this. I'll be game director. I'll help out and help direct, but other people. So yeah, he just might be like doing 3-day weeks, or he might just be directing the teams to a lesser effect. I mean, there's lots of stuff that it could mean, right? But is he going to be down in the trenches doing code as much? No, that would be my expectation.
Yeah, at the end of the day, as long as they've got the right people at the company with the right knowledge, like I think, like you said, they have a team of good people on the economy. And I know people will joke about what economy, but you can already see their changes starting to make a good difference in the game.
But so I think the interesting thing with Tony Zerovic as well is he is specifically listed on the Cloud Imperium website now as Tony Zerovic, game director emeritus, and he's one of Chris's, I believe, Chris and Erin's oldest friends. Like, they've known each other for decades. So is it possible that he's got shares tied into the company? Is it possible that contractually he has to hold a title or something? Potentially. But again, that's just loads of sort of like, we don't know at all.
Yeah.
But I like Tony Z. I think he's a good chap.
Yeah. I wouldn't doubt if there's something sticky like that. I mean, that's just, I think, something that comes up with companies that start small and get big. And I lost my train of thought. Oh, right. So you mentioned the financials earlier. How about we talk a little bit about that? Because normally those come out, I think, in January every year, but we still haven't seen them. Yeah. And
so it looks like the actual financials from Companies House, they haven't been submitted yet, and that's not too uncommon. There's lots of reasons why they might not be submitted. I think they had a change of chief financial officer or chief marketing officer, and some people that might have submitted, like secretary and stuff, might have changed around, so there might be a bit of a delay in that, and you can apply for like later filings and stuff like that. So that in itself isn't particularly uncommon. It's just, yeah, I would have expected something from CIG. CIG have basically said financials are coming. We're going to be putting out some or something similar, but we don't know when still. Like,
Yeah.
important, right? Well, it's for me.
How much is in the piggy bank, Bored? Do they have $500 million ready to go?
Not 500 million, I wouldn't expect. So last year was the second best year they've ever had. 116 million they raised. That's excluding subscriptions and stuff. It could potentially be the best ever year they've raised, but I want to see the financials first.
Mm-hmm.
And the year before it was 117 million. They're doing fantastic financially, from what I can tell, and they have just re-geared all their studios and got rid of some staff and moved around C-suite executives. So I think they're doing pretty well financially. Probably the best they've done financially, but it is hard to tell. And obviously, I've got a bit of a bias in that I think that they are doing well. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you just said that they made 1 million less this year than they did last year. That sounds like everything's lost. It's all done.
Well, the other thing is that, yeah, if they've got a load more subscriptions in the last year, that would potentially could be their best year for crowdfunding, and they are rapidly approaching $1 billion in crowdfunding. Funding from all sources, I should say.
Yeah. So that obviously gives people pause. I mean, even I don't know if anybody is listening to this podcast who doesn't know about the funding situation with Star Citizen, but even now, some people might be like, "Wait, what? That's a lot of money." Do you think that they've done enough? That's like one of the big things that you see people say online. $700 million and it's buggy. $800 million and it's buggy. $5.2 billion and it's still buggy.
That's because people have decided a arbitrary calculation for why Star Citizen has failed, and then go to push that. It's a statistics thing. So you could do that to say Star Citizen is the best game ever. You could use it to say the worst game ever. It's entirely irrelevant. How much money over the years has World of Warcraft spent? If you just went, they've spent $4 billion on a game. It sort of boggles the mind. Like sort of that sort of level really annoys me. You don't know unless you have all of the figures, and we don't have all of the figures. So a lot of it is just speculation and conjecture. And yeah, it's fine to do that, and it's fine to talk about it, and it's fine to be cautious and outline the issues that might come along. But to then say this means X, that annoys me so much.
Well, why do you think then that what do you think is the mystery holding up the finances? You said it could be that they've changed around staff and stuff might be happening, but it could also be that they're just trying to prepare some announcements or get ready for news that's coming out that maybe started last year.
Yeah, it's so the most likely thing in my head is, well, I have no real I have no actual evidence of this or whatever, but it just feels like that this time there's such a big monumental change, and they are pushing towards Star Citizen 1.0, they're pushing towards Squadron 42, they are getting their house in order so that once the game is released for 1.0, once Squadron 42 Episode 1's released, they have the potential of going, investors, we'll open the game up to investors, things like that. Because think about the future of Star Citizen. Is it always going to be a crowd-funded model for CIG? If they're around for another 2 or 3 decades or something, they might want to go, well, actually, we do want investors, we do want shareholders, we do want to expand the company out and change this. And maybe they want to get their stuff in order for that. And it could just be, it's actual, just a monumental switch of stuff. So they're potentially presenting this stuff in a different way, because it was on their website and sort of more of a corporate statement to shareholders and stuff previously. But maybe they want something that's a more player facing.
I see.
I don't know. That's the answer.
one of the things that they were proud of was the crowdfunding during the alpha stage. Do you really think that they could turn towards investors after it releases? I mean, we have investors
Like,
there for Squadron,
it's
smaller, but
65 million or something.
yeah. But for
Close
Star
to that.
Citizen, do you think that they might actually
They
turn that?
could in the future. It's potentially in the future after release. They could like think about the how are they actually going to fund the game? We don't really know. They've talked about selling currency. They've talked about not selling ships and stuff like that. I suspect they will sell anything they can get away with because marketing's the major issue I have with Star Citizen at the moment. Marketing the game as being significantly more playable than it is because of the trailers. And if you just look at the trailer, you're like, oh wow,
Yeah.
you can do that stuff in the trailer if you have a team of people with you that are filming, trying to get those shots, and then you put it together. That is not a representative of the in-game experience.
Hmm.
Um, and they have that with ship sales and stuff like that. It's all cool and it's leading to a great game. I understand why they're doing it for their monetization model. We wouldn't have Star Citizen in the form that it is and the scale that it is and the game that I want it to be without this monetization model. But there are certainly problems with marketing sort of colliding with development, and maybe that's one of the reasons that they're moving into more content driven now because it will be content and ships. I promise you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody keeps asking, does this mean they're not doing ships anymore? No.
They're doing ships that don't require new features.
Yeah. Yeah. Got to keep the ships flowing. And I think
Mhm.
you make a good point. Something that a lot of people have been, tossing around in their heads recently. Many people would probably point towards the Star Engine trailer and say that wasn't just for us. And CIG might be starting to look into people who are more interested in their tech than their game. It's kind of
Yeah.
always been what attracted us, let's be honest.
Well, there were rumors that they were working on another game or another company was interested. There's been loads of random rumors. I,
Yes.
I love I love a good Star Citizen rumor.
That's
Oh,
right, dude. Oh my gosh, that's right. On my stream last week, I had some BoredGamer imposter come in to the chat and leave a message.
was not me.
Yeah, it wasn't you, and I was dumb for not looking for the check mark. But this person comes in and tries to make some story about CIG working on another game, and then people take this comment from my stream and they talk about it elsewhere, and like people are definitely there are rumors swirling of that kind of stuff, and I think it would be absolutely awful if that happened. But I think people should probably wait for the actual financials to come out before saying crazy stuff like that.
I don't mind people. So, from my point of view, I actually quite like a good bit of speculation and talking shit with that sort of stuff. Just like what if and I reckon. As long as you're mature enough to know that it is just that you're just literally you're an AI hallucinating. As long as you realise that, I think it's fine. It's like talk about it in a mature way. But yeah, there's yeah, as I said, I love a good rumor. I love sort of going. Ooh.
Well, I'm hoping that we do hear about theaters of war, if anything, this year.
Well, so Theatres of War will probably just be rolled into Arena Commander in general. I
Yeah.
mean, so a lot of the Theatres of War stuff is basically being used to make missions and content for Star Citizen, and things like and evolve things like print or die. What's the new 4.0.2
Oh,
mission set called? The new Jump Town. I can't remember what it's called.
deliver? I don't know. I only heard it once.
It's Supply or Die.
Supply or die.
It's a factional warfare version of Jump Town, but for Pyro.
Yeah. So
But
this is kind of an example of what they mean when they say content focused patches.
hmm.
So what do you now that we've seen both Fight for Pyro and this, what's the vibe you're getting from them going forward for the rest of the year in terms of content?
Well, they're using a lot of their devs to make more content area and build missions. A lot of the stuff they said they wanted narrative driven and new mission sets every time. And although those narrative missions will be one and done, all of the mission content that they've got there will be reused for other missions in the future or rejigged around for like more modular stuff. So yeah, I mean, get Star Citizen in good order. expand out tons and tons of stuff to do that's really interesting, because you could just go, we're not adding any more features in Star Citizen forever, but we're going to have really interesting missions. Cool, yeah.
Yeah.
Mission me up.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much potential if you just have a little bit of good writing. You don't even need voice acting for a good mission. It's nice, but there.
But you can throw it in occasionally, right? And
Yeah.
that makes other missions great. And then you want a big mix of these missions, so that we have a load of stuff that you can do without getting bored and without it being too repetitive.
Yeah. So do you think something that they're going to do this year is make sure that each of the different game loops we have, so salvage, mining, racing, a lot of these already have them, but like mining is definitely missing actual missions, actual reputation and contracts. Do you think they're going to make sure across the board everybody's got that support?
I would think so. I'd assume we would see entry-level missions for all of these things that will kind of almost teach you that they want to get those guilds out, stuff like that. Because I wouldn't say guilds as a feature. I would say it's actually expansion of content, because they've got the factional warfare and that sort of stuff in now.
That's
anyway.
true. That is very true.
So yeah, I think exactly that. Expand out all of the gameplay loops, and get them all in order, get them into a real good state, so that the game can be considered out of alpha. Although it's obviously technically not, because they haven't finished all the features. But
yeah, that's kind of the weird thing, is they're gonna push it to get to this point where it's out of alpha, but then also there are features.
Marketing. It's another marketing sort of thing that they've got going on. They want to rebrand the game again. Because last year's rebrand was early access. Don't call it alpha, call it early access.
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet. Still.
Well, the marketing teams think they are. Look at all the little videos and the trailers and stuff on YouTube. So
yeah, that's rough. I mean, their whole putting playable now at the end of the trailers this whole time is just such an unnecessary mistake. It's so unneeded. You've already got this huge trailer that looks incredible. You don't have to then come out at the end and say playable now, when that is questionable on any given day.
I personally think it's fair to say playable now. I want them to say, I don't know. I feel that they need to inform people at a glance much more of Star Citizen's alpha nature. But that said, if they get it all in order this year, great.
Yeah,
they don't need to. If think of the amount of sort of streamers and big content creators and stuff who will pick Star Citizen up and go, wow, cool. That would make the game so mainstream, getting a load of people just going, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, because it's still unique. But like that feels like them running away from the fact that they have to answer for not telling people all this time that, hey, it's rougher than we've been saying. Now they're like, well, we could change the messaging, or we could just fix the game. And like, obviously everybody wants the game fixed, but
yeah, to be honest, I don't need to hold them accountable if they can actually get out what they need. It's the same with the same problem I had with No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky lied about exactly what was being released to the game, at least in my opinion. Don't sue me. So it had like this multiplayer and all this sort of stuff that didn't have, and they released a much more limited version of the game that was not great. But then they sat down for a year and made it significantly better, and they kept on adding more and more and more and more and more to it. And you might argue that you don't like No Man's Sky, how it is evolved, but I'd say that they are the game that they had originally promised and a load more now.
Yeah. Sat down for another 8 years after that and just kept going for free. Yeah. Freaking crazy.
Well, I mean, they're getting money from selling their game.
They're getting money, but they're not charging for the updates, which is pretty nice. Going back to content in this year, because I think really kind of drilling down into what content means could actually leave people more excited than they thought this would be. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that like the factions and guilds are actually probably content. I didn't really think about that, but it's not introducing new features to make that happen. Do you think mission givers or like NPCs that are talking to you, would that be considered content as well? Something that they probably would bring in?
That's 100% content. That's all content. Okay. New features are things like crafting, base building, engineering, hacking, all that sort of stuff. Data as cargo, although I do think data as cargo is a lower hanging fruit that they can probably address, as is hacking. But
I really hope so, because gosh, we need map markers. Holy crap! Like I don't. Literally, all I want to be able to do is mark a spot on a map.
But so interestingly, exploration, not a feature. Exploration is content.
Because you're just building in the locations and the things to find.
Things to explore, making missions associated with that, and yeah, you need to get the map and the ability to share data. But again, that's not a feature. That's just getting the star map in order.
Yeah.
At least in my opinion.
And like quantum boost, I think would be a part of that. But like you said, that's also might be considered content. Or did you say that? I don't know. That might just be a feature they're working on.
Yeah, I mean, they're still working on features, and I'd hope that things like the new quantum travel stuff, because we know that they're working on the changed master modes, right? They've got master modes and they've pushed that into operator modes, and they're going. Actually, it's not as a binary decision as we originally said. It's not. I'm not ad restrictive. And I suspect that will come with the quantum travel update and quantum boosting and stuff like that in the near future. This year would be my expectation. That and engineering, I suspect, are the most likely features to come the soonest.
That would be good if they just had the quantum travel update, a little bit of map stuff, engineering, and yeah, mainly that stuff. Like I would be very happy with where we could go when it comes to content, because we could see new storylines popping up this year. We could see the return of Tessa Bannister. Like, we don't know what they're gonna do.
That'd be great. But yeah, as I said, if they get the game into a good playable state and then just keep on adding interesting missions and lots of stuff to do, yeah, Star Citizen probably is in a pretty good state. And it's not going to be the state that some people want it to be, and it's not going to be the state that people had expected.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a good, fun, playable game, and I'm sort of fine with that. We know that they're pushing towards 1.0 still, but it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. As I said, I absolutely love the project, warts and all, and it's been a whirlwind and continues to be covering it.
Yeah, it's definitely a big shift, and I'm interested in seeing what happens at the end of this year. But it could be pretty good for the game overall. Here's a big question: is a new star system going to take new features, or just new content, or a mixture of both?
Don't need new features for Nyx, do you? You just need to put up another one of the jump points, which already exist. That's content driven, in my opinion. It's a gameplay area, content driven. Are new biomes content or features? Good question. And what about dynamic weather and stuff like that, which is starting to be shown in game because you've got dynamic clouds. Yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, I do think they will get Nyx in within the next 18 months, but potentially by the end of the year. But I don't know.
That's actually a background question right now, which is funny. But for the longest time,
I'm still here. I can listen.
Yeah, I get you. For the longest time, it was, oh, we need to have no money until Pyro. We need a new star system, and now we've got a new star system. But we're all kind of coalescing again into that one view of, okay, so we've got this new space. Now we need to do stuff in it, and I think that one of the little secret possibilities they might have would be that they can introduce the Nyx system sometime, maybe not this year, but maybe in the next, like Board said, 18 months. And that would actually be a big boon to the game, because the Nyx system is not just a new star system. It introduces our first zero-G landing zone, which will be huge for cargo haulers. It introduces a new population center that is separated from Stanton by Pyro. So you have that sort of travel in between Stanton and Nyx that will galvanize some activity in Pyro. Overall, it could actually be a pretty significant system to add to the game. And it's also something that we just want to go back to, because it's been a while.
I think that Nyx is actually really far along. But that's me personally. Like, from what I heard and what I've seen, and obviously a lot of that stuff they showed at CitizenCon, I do think it's pretty far along.
What do you think is like the biggest piece of work that they need to do it, considering Delamar was in the game before?
I think that Delamar's been reasonably reworked. I can't think of much that they need to get done for it. That I suppose making sure the content is there for it. So I actually think the missions and the factions and the recording of the audio and making sure they've got the models and the equipment and stuff like that, the actual content driven part, that is the main thing they need to get ready. Otherwise, it's just an empty system, right? Or, a bare bones system.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering, because they mentioned the Van Duel with this system, I'm wondering how long that would be. Does not strike me as something that would come in with the first Nyx drop. Let's talk about the last time this happened with CIG or with Star Citizen. Jumping back a little bit in history, 3.0 came out and it was also pretty rough. I think it was like maybe 8 or 9 months that we were sort of suffering for with 3.0. Does this release with 4.0 and all the things happening around it remind you of that time at all?
It was a bit different with 3.0 because the scale of the game. So the scale of the game from 3.0 to 4.0 is doubled. Yeah. So you've got a new star system basically. So and the gameplay area, the change and the scale of the change from 2.0 to 3.0 is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Because they went, not just a tiny, it's a proper star system now, not just around Crusader. So it's at least 4 times as big from. There was so many changes to 3.0, and I think people were like, I am just struck in awe by the coolness here. Whereas 3.0 to 4.0, it's less cool. It's more gameplay area expansion and stuff like that. I mean, obviously there's a huge amount of features and stuff that have been put in, but the change to 4.0 is less drastic.
It doesn't feel as big a step forward because it's not. It's like it's just another star system. You're right. Whereas with 3.0, we went from all of the walkable area being on spaceships and space stations to moons.
Persistent universe, actual. You could go on planets. There was so much.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. And they had never really. The planet stuff is largely sort of accidental, called coincidental, that they are able to do that. This is just one of the Crytek devs, I think, that they had hired.
Yeah.
This team just went, look, I've actually done some pretty cool tech for being able to seamlessly land on a planet, and they've gone, okay, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, let's gear towards this. And that's one of the other joys of being more content focused now. No more re-gearing towards random features.
Yes. Yeah. No more. Hey, we could do this better. Oh, okay then. Let's try it like that.
End of feature creep, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Some people would say, "Oh no," because they feel like some features needed to change before that happened. Do you think that like they're going to be stuck with a terrible UI or something, or will that still?
No, they're going to continue to evolve that. So they're still going to evolve those features. For sure, it's just the inclusion of new features will be a lot rarer. But the evolution of whatever you think is bad, talk to CIG about it in the particular forums that you can. I suspect a lot of other people will also agree with you that something is bad, and they'll fix it, they'll evolve it. You're going to have all the systems that we have currently in game evolved somewhat.
Yeah. Do you think that? Well, actually, I didn't really get to ask you. So, is this worse off than 3.0 launch?
Different. I was much more in awe of when 3.0 came out than I am of 4.0. Yeah, it's just different. It depends on by what metric you say worse. And it would be an arbitrary thing.
That is true. Yeah, just worse in. Oh gosh. Well, the community. The community is so much bigger now than it was back then. I mean, like 4 times the size it was back then. So it's interesting to see how many different opinions there are on what should be done now. Because back then you'd have people saying all kinds of different things of we want to keep pushing forward, or we want this kind of feature, or why did you change this? There are different opinions now, but there's such a strong drive behind like, no, CIG do this. And
well, so the interesting thing about that as well, you referred to me at the beginning of this as a war veteran. but the percentage of war veterans significantly dropped because of the amount of people that have now joined the game, right?
Yeah.
So if you triple the player base, you've got a much significantly smaller percentage of people that have been there for ages, wanting potentially different stuff from CIG from the start. So it is interesting from CIG's point of view. Like, how do they balance what is wanted by the newer players compared to the older players? Who's spending what? As well, like, are the new players actually bringing in a huge amount more money, or is it still old school Wales
Yeah.
driving most of the funding? We don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
It's also the money is sometimes coming from a different place than the opinions are. There might be
Mm.
old school whales that are still dropping tons of money on this game, but a lot of the criticism and things you're hearing come from people who have spent less than $100 in the last 4 years, and all of those people's opinions are the same amount of validity. But clearly, like you said, there's a lot more of one than the other. I mean, more people have joined this project since 2020 than before it. So the opinion of how this game should work is skewed a lot more towards gaming since the 2020s, or maybe the vision and the view that they've given of Star Citizen's development since then than before.
When was 3.0? Was that was
That was 2017 December.
well, yeah. So early 2018, I think, was when it was like more
Yeah,
playable.
yeah. 2018 was like when it really came into. It was basically just like 4.0. They dropped it, I think, December 23rd of 2017, and then it was terrible until into the new year, when they updated it. And no, it was terrible until November when 3.3 came out with OCS.
When did we get the Delta patcher?
I think that was with 3.0.
Hmm.
Maybe actually.
I thought it was much deeper into 3.x.
Yeah, you might be right about that.
Can't remember though. I
Because
don't have
I
it in my
was
notes.
3.0 was the first one that I really jumped in to start playing more, and I remember getting excited for the Delta Patcher, so I'm guessing it was a little bit later.
Yeah. I reckon it was a few years later.
Yeah, so what we're talking about, folks, is when you used to have to get an update from Star Citizen, you would have to download the whole game every time.
Maybe it was with 3.0.
Whew.
I can't remember. Hmm. So,
Interestingly, though, I mean, again, just like with that time, they were changing the launcher, they did that again now, too. CIG is so cyclical.
yeah, I can't find it as a listed feature in 3.0's patch. The fact that the Delta patch is now live means that they can push the patch more frequently. So someone has said that it was live at that time.
Okay. That was also a big change. Nice little quality of life improvement. I bet it was
Yeah,
big for them, actually.
it was huge for CIG. It's maybe not as big as server meshing, but it allowed them to save a huge amount of money on amount of data sent. Actually, have players be able to get hot fixes, well, minor updates without having to download ridiculous amount of stuff, so they could push it to players and make them voluntary QA much better, I suppose.
Yeah. Do you think that Star Citizen is looking to compromise to ship a game instead of continuing to pursue systemic gameplay that sets it apart?
I mean, isn't all development and all what CIG have been doing since their Genesis compromising and balancing features versus what is oddly a live development as a service?
I would say from their from Chris first saying that he wanted to make the best space sim ever, the game got better. Like they expanded the definition of that. We saw planets come in. We got new ideas for how we would travel, the ability to interact or move. You know, they originally wanted to do a bunch of instances. Now they're doing meshing
I'd
and stuff.
argue with you that currently Star Citizen is not the best damn space sim ever or best
Oh, you don't
damn
have to
space
argue
game
with
ever.
me about that.
Well, so I mean, I think it genuinely will be in the future, and I think that that's what they're going for. And it certainly is the most impressive space game or space sim ever. But yeah, it's certainly not there yet.
hmm So you think that they're still going to hit that? Like they're not going to fall short of what they're shooting for?
I mean, again, it depends on your exactly how you outline and define that. I think that the original plans for Star Citizen, as they've evolved and the expectations the game has had, they are unable to meet expectation. Full stop. It is not going to be able to meet everyone's expectation. It is not going to be able to meet the median sort of expectations. There are too many expectations. Will it make the expectations of 1.0? Yes, I believe it will. I believe it will be able to do that, and potentially a little bit more. Beyond that, which I think is one of the more important things for Star Citizen as well, what are they going to do for the decade afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be adding more. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I'm not sure how they're going to re-gear for that, and I'm not sure how great that is going to be or not, but I look forward to it.
Okay, and to close us off, I'm curious, what are you looking for out of Star Citizen? Like, what's your long-term game for this game?
Base building for me, in industry and base building are the stuff I want to do the most. But I want a game that I can sit down, play without any resets, that I can progress in whatever I fancy progress in, and there's a load of content, a load of missions for me to do at whatever scale I want to do them. If I'm running like for a few hours, like I've got a weekend and there's no one else around, I want to be able to, or I don't fancy talking to people, I can run a load of solo stuff myself for the weekend, but also I can easily jump in with another group, whether they are a group that are my org or just a random group of people easily doing whatever we fancy doing, base building or industry, or going to try and capture some ships, go and do some bounty hunting. I want an accessible game for the gameplay that is there to be accessed. But for me, it's mostly base building and industry.
Do you sound like you're more of a group player than a solo?
It changes.
Okay.
I'm bipolar, so I literally have very different views on that day to day.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do too. When that kind of debate comes up of is the game being built for groups or for solo players, I think people miss the fact that most folks do both, and CIG recognizes that.
And you can do missions at different scales, and you can have a load of stuff that allows you to do both, and even stuff that is bigger than that. So the events and stuff they do, you can join in solo, or you can join in as an org, and you can have multiple orgs working towards the same goal. Cool.
Yeah. All right, man. I think this is a pretty good little review of where they are right now with Star Citizen, what's going on. There's more that we did not talk about, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot more to talk about if there is like a roadmap roundup or whatever the heck's going on with roadmap roundups this week.
Or give me death.
Yeah, because the monthly report just came out for January, and it was such a January monthly report. It's just so quiet.
Well, so they mentioned sandworms at least.
Yeah.
But every other feature, including engineering, was suspiciously missing.
Yeah. Yeah, the core gameplay section was so small.
Well, it's
Sad
good.
day.
I suspect core gameplay will become core gameplay / content, rather than features, right? Like, because I think that they'll be doing a huge amount still. They'll just be not working on new features.
Yeah, tuning stuff and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was a good look into it, I think. Thank you so much for joining me for this one, Bored. Before you go, I don't think anybody is confused about it, but could you let folks know where they can find some of your content?
You can go to youtube.com/BoredGamerUK. I think that's my name on like Twitch and everything else, all the other social medias and stuff. I've run a dedicated Star Citizen news channel for over a decade. That is the content that I'm going to continue to put out. But as Star Citizen becomes more and more playable, I'll be doing more gameplay on the channel. That is just, I'm going to run these missions with Zin and my editor or my org or whatever. As Star Citizen becomes more content heavy, so too will my channel with gameplay.
Finally time to start playing the game.
Well, play it, but it's time to actually make videos on it that aren't frustrating. I don't want to record 8 hours of footage to only use 15 minutes of it.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's I've been waiting to do my whole like 0 to hero kind of stuff until the game. I was waiting until 4.0 or whatever was stable after 4.0, so I'm still waiting. But
Soon.
I'm with you there. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for looking into this today with me, and thank you everybody for listening. We release these podcasts every week on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform if you'd like, unless your favorite podcast platform is like something really obscure. I'm sorry, but otherwise you should be able to find it. And I'll I'll see you all again next week.